What's up, everyone? Welcome into another edition of Eyes on Golf. And this is a creative one. If you're tuning in and you're looking at the description or you clicked on social media and you're still not 100% sure of what this podcast is about, that's okay, because I'm going to try to explain. I explain off the top in the podcast, so this might ultimately be redundant. But now that we've taped the podcast, I want to put it out there. My idea was to create a March Madness bracket for current professional golfers, not just professional golfers, actually, because there are some amateurs that we put in here. But the point being, not how guys played in college when they were in college, not how guys played at their peak, but right now, if you created a bracket of players based on colleges right now, what would that look like and who would win? And on top of that, we decided, I guess I decided as the host of this podcast, the fair way to do this would be that each school would have to field 3 players. So if you're Georgia and you could field a team of 10 players, doesn't matter. You're putting your best 3 out there. If you're Pepperdine and you can just get to 3, really bona fide professional top tier players, that's fine. I mean, that's what you're competing with. So that was what we decided. Roberto Arguello and Myan Patel were both esteemed guests who were on this panel with me. The 3 of us kind of going through each matchup and deciding who would win each. Ultimately there was a round of 32 is where we started with, not 64, but we have 36 teams. So there were 4 play-in games for those 8 seeds, 1 through 8, 4 different regions. And we went through each game, each matchup, and our panel of 3, we decided who would win each matchup. Pretty straightforward there. The other note, we'll get into this, but Roberto and Myan both asked a couple questions about what type of venue are we playing? Would this be match play or stroke play? I kind of said, we'll see where it goes. And ultimately what we landed on as this podcast goes along is that we're imagining all of this happening at Augusta National. We felt like that was a fair venue to judge what the game of golf demands. And on top of that, we kind of evolved into match play 3 different matches. So player 1, player 2, player 3. So as we really got into debates late in the bracket, it was a matter of, okay, player 1, the 2 player 1s go head to head, 2 player 2s go head to head, 2 player 3s go head to head. Who would win 2 out of those 3 matchups in this situation? So hopefully that explains our bracket madness, our March Madness, whatever you want to call it, whatever's not going to get me sued, version of Eyes on Golf. So that is coming up right now. And I think, since I can't really play the music, but I think I can hum it. We are trying something here. And I appreciate my esteemed panel here being willing to be guinea pigs in this experiment, which maybe, who knows, could go on for years to come. March Madness has gone on for almost a century at this point. We are doing a March Madness version of Eyes on Golf right here, which I'll explain in a second. First, I want to introduce this panel. I want to start with the host of Links and Locks on the Action Network, a play-by-play host for PGA Tour Live, a resident of Austin, Texas, which he is rocking right now. And it says here, a graduate of Stanford University, which I believe is in Connecticut. Roberto Arguello. Is that where that college is?
Close enough, right?
Stanford University, the tree is what we're actually talking about here. And my other panelist is a play-by-play host for PGA Tour Live, host for SiriusXM PGA Tour Radio, a resident of Knoxville, Tennessee, and a graduate of the University of Georgia, Myan Patel. We almost had a second Georgia panelist, so it's okay at the end of the day that we end up with a Georgia and Stanford panelist. Thank you, boys, for being with me today.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Jeff. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we'll see if you're thanking me an hour later. I am Jeff Eisenband, a resident in New York City and a graduate of the Northwestern University. If you're watching on video, we're rocking some college gear right now. We're in the March Madness spirit. If you've come here and are wondering, well, what is this podcast about to be what is it about? I'm taking a chance here, and my idea was to create a bracket of golfers, not PGA Tour players specifically, because we've got some live golfers on here. We've got some college golfers. We've got some Korn Ferry Tour golfers. We've got somehow a long drive golfer ended up here. One player you might say is more of an influencer on our list. And the way that I thought this would be fair is to create 3-man teams of alumni of universities playing right now and how they would fare right now. So that means we're not talking about the Tiger Woods version at Stanford in the 90s. We're talking about Tiger Woods right now. We're not talking about Ryan Moore and what he did when he was at UNLV. We're talking about the top UNLV alumni right now. So what I did was I looked at the list of all those golfers out there. I created I was the selection committee. I created I guess, Roberto, what do they call that? The official seating, you
are the selection committee. This is the official bracket.
Yeah. These are the actual official rankings. And then I put everything into seeds, 36 team bracket. So 32 really plus 4 playing games for those 8 seeds. There are 2 of you guys. There's 1 of me. I want to hash out these matchups. We're going to talk about them, and we're going to see, just because I made those the official seedings doesn't mean that I'm married to some of those, some of those matchups. If you guys can convince me and we can go 2-1 at the end of the day that we should have an upset. I want to see upsets here. That's what we're trying to do. So I want to read, I guess, does everything that I'm saying make sense? Because also you guys each had 2 different questions yesterday. Roberto, you asked, well, what course is this? Are we imagining this is all on? Myan, you asked, is this match play or stroke play? My answer to both is yes. We can take this however we want. I said maybe Augusta National would be a great sort of barrier to judge everything, but I want this to be as open-ended as possible. Do you have any other questions about what we're doing here today?
Those are the big ones for me. I wanted just to have something concrete so I could try to optimize my thoughts too, my analysis too. So I'm just going to say, I don't know how Jeff and Myan are doing it. I'm going to do it by match play, and I'm doing it for Augusta National because we said after March Madness starts, the next big time tournament is the Masters, so why not do it for Augusta National?
Yeah, I'm with you on that front, Roberto. I'm good there, and I just wanted to clarify. I'm glad that you put out there, Jeff. You made this bracket, so all the people out there that are going to be upset about the seeds and who got left out, Jeff's your guy. Don't come after me and Roberto. He is the selection committee, and I mean, a tough job. Had a tough job making the bracket, but no, this is gonna be fun. I'm excited to dive into it.
Well, yeah. Again, we're going to see based on everything that you're talking about so far. And then to make the brackets, I did the traditional S curve. So I put in all the teams 1 to 36, made it an S curve, and created the bracket, which we're going to put out the picture of so you can follow along. I recognize that you are listening to this all on audio. We're going to explain everything as we go along so that you can follow exactly where we're going. I want to get into it. I want to read you guys to start. Let's read these were the official top 36 and the 3-man teams that I formulated. I would say I used OWGR, which I was relying on, but I didn't want to straight up do it because as much as I am an OWGR truther, there are definitely some players that we had to be arbitrary about. So I decided to make adjustments. We're taping this the Tuesday before the Players' Championship. So between the Arnold Palmer Invitational and the Players' Championship might go live after the Players. So it's important to note we're coming off Bay Hill. I made a change, Roberto, right before we started. The Texas Longhorns. I'm doing my Greg Gumbel right now. The Texas Longhorns are the #1 overall seed. They're led by the world #1 Scottie Scheffler and 3-time major winner Jordan Spieth. Bo Hostler claims the 3rd spot on this top overall team. Doug Gim also considered. I'm taking Bo Hostler for this team based on his last 2 years. On top of that, just one quick story that I love. Bo Hostler, when he was in high school, almost low amateur. A lot of people think he was a low amateur at that 2012 U.S. Open at Olympic Club. Jordan Spieth actually clipped him on the last day to win low amateur. So Texas on Texas crime right there. They're your number 1 seed. The number 2 seed, Roberto, you're not going to like this one. The California Golden Bears, who I dropped from 1 to 2, but 2 players who've hovered around the top 10 over the last 2 years, Max Homa and Collin Morikawa at the top. And how about red hot Ben On rounding out that team? Michael Kim and James Hahn also considered. The other 2 number 1 overall seeds, maybe the Duke of college golf, the Oklahoma State Cowboys. They've produced some of the top talent over the last couple of years. They're the 3 overall seed, Victor Hovland, Ricky Fowler. And this was controversial. There were a lot of ways that we could have gone. I went with Taylor Gooch, who it's impossible to really know where Taylor Gooch should be, but I'm taking him as the 3rd player on this team, some veteran leadership. Austin Eckroat, certainly among those considered. Matthew Wolff, Sam Stevens as well, Peter Uihlein. The Georgia Bulldogs, Myan, round out the number 1 seeds. Could have gone so many different ways with them. The 3-man team, they're led by the Open champion himself, Brian Harman, Chris Kirk, who won the Century earlier this year, probably the top champion, the champion of this group so far this year. And how about one of the most underrated players in golf, Russell Henley, who's coming off another strong week at Bay Hill. So many others to choose from here. Sepp Straka is not getting it done so far this year. Harris English, right on the cusp, not doing it. Kevin Kisner would have been on this team if we did this the last 10 years probably, but not this time. Those are your 1 seeds. To speed through some of the others, the Alabama Crimson Tide, Justin Thomas, Nick Dunlap, Bud Cauley added to this group. I switched Bud Cauley in for Davis Riley at the last minute. You could also consider Lee Hodges, the Arizona State Sun Devils, John Rahm, Phil Mickelson, Grayson Murray. What an array of characters the Arizona State Sun Devils are. Could have gone Paul Casey or David Puig if someone really wanted me, forced my hand at an all-live team, but Grayson Murray deserves to be in that spot. Wake Forest.
Whoa. This is Kevin Yu erasure. First off, Kevin Yu.
Okay. Shout out to Kevin Yu.
I have an argument to be made that he should A, be considered, and B, he should be the number 2 or 3 seed for ASU. But we'll move on.
Well, let me say this, and I know people want to get to the bracket. I just wanted to read these top teams off. Phil Mickelson probably shouldn't be on this team, but we are definitely putting him on for the narrative. He is the reigning runner-up at Augusta National, at the Masters, so that's important to note. But sure, if we got into the data with this, I don't know if Phil makes this team. The other 2 seeds, the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, Will Zalatoris, red hot right now, Cameron Young, Webb Simpson, the UCLA Bruins moving on up the ladder. Of course, you think Patrick Cantlay, but Jake Knapp rounding out a power duo at the top of the UCLA Bruins right now. Kevin Chappell, with all due respect, maybe slipping a little bit on the 3rd spot on UCLA. We'll get to that. Maybe they're vulnerable to an upset. Also, Spencer Levine, for the narrative, we could have thrown him into the mix. UCLA, not the most depth, but that's a power duo at the top, Cantlay and Knapp. Just reading them off, Florida State, Pepperdine, Washington, and Illinois, the 3 seeds, Oregon, Kent State and Pepperdine. We've got a couple mid-major sightings. Kent State, a 3 seed, so are the Oklahoma Sooners and the SMU Mustangs. The UNLV Rebels, the Arkansas Razorbacks, the Virginia Cavaliers, and Stanford Cardinal are the 5 seeds. Vanderbilt, San Diego State, Florida, and Northwestern, so you know we're not biased here, are the 6 seeds. Georgia Tech, Clemson, Duke, a 7 seed, and Texas Tech. And then the 8 seeds we're going to get to right off the top, the Augusta Jaguars, the USC Trojans, the Texas A&M Aggies, the South Carolina Gamecocks, the LSU Tigers, the North Texas Mean Green, the Purdue Boilermakers, and the Tennessee Volunteers. I know that's a lot off the top. Hopefully we built the drama for you all. We're now going to get into the bracket. 3-man panel. I've got to be convinced. I want to see upsets. I want to hear what these guys have to say, but we're going to go to the first matchup, the first play-in matchup, the Augusta Jaguars against the Tennessee Volunteers. This is not Augusta State anymore. It was Augusta State when when these guys were all there, basically. Patrick Reed, Henrik Norlander, and Vaughn Taylor. Patrick Reed and Henrik Norlander, you might recall, won a national championship at Augusta State. You think about where they are right now, not quite. This would have been, I would say this would have been a dominant team in about 2016, 2017. They've dropped off a little bit. The Tennessee Volunteers, Myan, I put this in for you. Caleb Surratt, can the rookie lead this team right out of college? Just left Knoxville to go play on Live Golf. He's playing with David Skins, who's on his second tour of duty on the PGA Tour. And we had to reach to Rick Lamb, who's been a perennial Monday qualifier over the last few years on the PGA Tour. What do you guys think about this matchup?
You know, it's tough. I think looking at the body of work and what Patrick Reed, Norlander have done in the past, Vaughn Taylor included there for the Jaguars, my heart would lean that way, but I'm kind of riding with the young guys. I think Tennessee could take care of business. David Skin's in good form. He had that T4 at the Cognizant Classic down in the Palm Beaches a couple of weeks ago. I know he didn't have the best week down in Puerto Rico, but still made the cut there, played well. David Skins is in pretty good shape right now for being the old guy in that trio. Rick Lamb, you mentioned his Monday qualifying prowess, playing primarily on the Korn Ferry Tour this season. To make it through multiple Monday Qs, you've got to be a grinder and you've got to be able to go low and make a lot of birdies. So I like that out of Rick Lamb. Caleb Surratt, I think, is still getting his feet underneath him in the world of pro golf. I needed Tyrrell Hatton to help him check him into his hotel room in Vegas a few weeks ago when the Live event was there during the Super Bowl. But I think once he gets all of that kind of settled, he's going to play well. Obviously, no cuts, anything like that on Live. So he's getting better, but he's a guy that I just like based on potential. So I think the Vols could squeak it out, but I'll be honest, it's kind of a pick 'em in my eyes. I lean towards the Big Orange, but what are you feeling, Roberto?
Myan's made a case here for Tennessee that I didn't see coming, Roberto. And as he says it, I kind of think, all right, you could cancel Rick Lamb and Vaughn Taylor out, and then it's take your pick right now: Patrick Reed, Henrik Norlander, or David Skins and Caleb Surratt. Well, let's hear what you have to say.
The two best golfers here are Reed and Norlander, and I don't think it's particularly close. So if we're doing match play, I think that's 2 wins. You could make the other one a toss-up if you go Taylor versus Lamb. Neither of those guys are in the top 500 of the data golf rankings, so we're really reaching for these last couple teams in the bracket, but Norlander and Reed are 2 legitimate PGA Tour caliber golfers, and it's Augusta University. They're in Augusta. They've played there. They have the home course advantage. Patrick Reed has a green jacket. I think you got to go with Augusta here.
I like, this is why I had Roberto on mine, because he brings in the data there, which is important to note. And important, again, I'm not saying take this all how you want. Is it recency bias? Is it within the last year bias? We're going to give Patrick Reed the benefit of the doubt here. I think we're going to let the Augusta Jaguars move on. It was a little closer than I expected off the jump, but Patrick Reed still got it. He's moving on to the main part of the bracket. They get through the play-in game. So our second 8-8 matchup are the USC Trojans against the Purdue Boilermakers. Bronny James against Zach Edey. No, we've got USC Justin Suh, Rico Hoey, and Martin Traynor. I thought about putting Stuart Hagestad in here. I know I want, if you guys can make the argument. Obviously, he doesn't have the body of work in pro events, but has the body of work in majors and amateur events. On the Purdue side, this was an interesting one. Tyler Duncan, Adam Schenk. I didn't feel I could leave out the Boilermakers because those are 2 formidable PGA Tour players. The problem is we have to reach to Shiv Kapur as the 3rd player on this team, who has spent most of his career on the DP World Tour and is now playing on the Asian Tour. So that is a lackluster 3rd for the Boilermakers. Roberto, we'll start with you. What do you see in this matchup?
Oof. Yeah, we're digging deep with Shiv Kapur, so shout out to you for finding him. Because I don't know how many guys you went through before you found him. I think Shank is definitely the best golfer among these guys. I believe he tied for 10th last year at the Tour Championship. I think it's a real toss-up. I'll go with USC, but I'm not very convinced. I think they got the three. I think you got three of the five best golfers. I think Kapoor is an L. So you give him one win there. Shank's got one win for Purdue. So then it comes down to Tyler Duncan against pick your choice of Justin Suh and rookie Rico Hoey. You know what? I'll lean Purdue. I'm flipping to Purdue. I can't give USC anything here. Give me the Boilermakers. Let's go.
Myan, can we complete the upset? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm leaning Purdue as well because if we're going kind of that match play philosophy that Roberto was talking at the top, I like the experience of Tyler Duncan and Adam Schenk. I know that Justin Suh is a great young player on the PGA Tour, and he's had some success, especially last season, his first full year out on the PGA Tour. Rico Hoey in his first season on tour, so he definitely has the game to be there. That third match maybe is a pick 'em, maybe a loss for Purdue there, but I think Duncan and Shank pack a pretty powerful 1-2 punch. So I do like the Boilermakers.
All right,
I should mention that Duncan is a PGA Tour winner. USC doesn't have one among those three, so even though Shank is the best right now, he doesn't have a win on the PGA Tour. Got pretty close last year at the Valspar and at Colonial, Charles Schwab. So yeah, I'd agree with you, Myan.
Justin Suh, get the boys together. I don't even need to say anything. Purdue gets our first upset. I had to reach to put him in because I wasn't sure if they had a three-man team. Like I said, those are two top players in Shank and Duncan. They played together in the Zurich Classic of New Orleans last year, I believe. We're moving on. Purdue stays alive. We'll see if Matt Painter can do the same in a few weeks. Next 8 matchup. This is a revenge game. I don't know if you guys know that. Ryan Palmer and the Texas A&M Aggies. He actually transferred from North Texas to Texas A&M, some 25 years ago. Ryan Palmer, Cameron Champ, and the 2022 U.S. Amateur Champion, Sam Bennett, taking on the North Texas Mean Green, former college teammates Carlos Ortiz and Sebastian Munoz, playing with Kyle Berkshire. That's how far we had to reach for North Texas, who is more well-known for World Long Drive. He has participated in some mini tour events and played in college at North Texas. This goes back to your guys' match play idea. I mean, you just need Berkshire to drive the ball, right, Myan?
Yeah, I mean, look, watching him go against Cameron Champ would be a lot of fun. If I'm a fan out there, I would go with a hard hat and maybe some binoculars because they're sending him in orbit. That would be a fun match to see. I think I'm leaning towards the Mean Green. I know Ryan Palmer's a grinder,
Wow.
and I love Sam Bennett and just his moxie that he plays with and the confidence he has, but he hasn't found that success in a couple of PGA Tour starts that he's had this season off the heels of that USAM run last year and what he did last year at the Masters. Meanwhile, Carlos Ortiz is in pretty good shape at the moment. He had, I think, a top 5 finish in Hong Kong on LIV, and Sebastian Munoz is a guy that shot 60 on the PGA Tour not too long ago before he went over to LIV. So a guy that can go low and make a lot of birdies, which is what I'm looking for in match play. Just somebody that can pile on the circles. So I'm leaning North Texas.
Roberto, this is a Texas battle.
I gotta agree. I'm going with the Mean Green. I love Munoz first round leader bet. You can never go wrong with him there, as Myan said. Birdie maker. Carlos Ortiz also in pretty decent form. We're judging this right now, not on the body of work. So you said top 5 in Hong Kong. He won in Oman on the Asian Tour as well recently. So playing some pretty solid golf this year. I got to go with the Mean Green. I think Ryan Palmer's great, 500 starts on the PGA Tour, but not in the best form right now. Cameron Champ, best ball speed on the PGA Tour. Really, really fun to see him in Berkshire, but I don't know I don't think he can get the ball. I don't trust him to get the ball in the hole. Somebody's going to beat Berkshire. He's by far the worst golfer here. Bennett did well at the Masters last year, but I still give the edge overall to the Mean Green. Wow.
I would say you guys are a little nuts because Kyle Berkshire trying to compete with any of these professional golfers. I think it's a minus as fun as it is to watch, but you know what? We've got ourselves another light upset in these play-in matchups. North Texas, the Mean Green, moving on. Last 8 matchup. Another, and some of this is a little bit for the content for these 8 seeds. This is an SEC matchup. The South Carolina Gamecocks, Matthew Neesmith with Brian Bros Golf, Wesley Bryan and George Bryan taking on the LSU Tigers. Sam Burns is like, why am I down here as an 8 seed? It's because you're playing with Andrew Loop and Curtis Thompson. Curtis Thompson, Lexi Thompson's brother. We saw him up on the PGA Tour last year. Didn't go that well. Where do we go with these guys? This SEC matchup. Anyone want to take it?
Yeah, go for it, Roberto.
Do the Bryan brothers have enough, Roberto?
Judging by what I've just learned off of very recent Google searches and data golf searches on Andrew Loop and Curtis Thompson, I think the Cox win this one. I think the 2 worst golfers are on the LSU team. They've also got the best player, but I think Sam Burns gets you a point, but one of the Bryan Bros take the other 2 points, and I think they got to get the dub here. Andrew Loop, I think, is by far the worst among these players. He doesn't have any starts professionally, I don't think, since 2022, so I don't know how I could pick him.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Sam Burns, by far and away the best player out of those 6. Matt Neesmith not in the greatest form right now for the Gamecocks, but still has shown some flashes. And then George can play. I mean, he played in the PGA Tour event, got a sponsors exemption into Bermuda in the fall and made the cut there. You mentioned the content factory that they're putting out, Jeff. They can play. They can make a lot of birdies. They're not afraid of the big moments. So, and I think they just got a good draw. You just got to double team Sam Burns and, figure out the rest.
I'd also say that Curtis Thompson is the 5th player with the last name of Thompson who pops up on the data golf search bar behind Davis, Nicholas, Kyle, and Michael. So I don't think that's a good sign.
No, Curtis, and I would say George Bryan, remember, I believe he did make the cut at the event that he Monday qualified for last fall. So I think you guys are right. I think you got to give it to South Carolina. This is an example of Sam Burns is like that guy in March Madness who he's like Steph Curry at Davidson. Like he took this team to the tournament, but I guess maybe Steph would be too good in this situation. He's the one guy on the team. He carried them to that 8 seed, but just not enough to get a win here. So now we appreciate all the fan patience to get to this point in the show. And hopefully you're sticking with us as we've gone through the 8 seeds now. Now we can get into the main bracket. All right. So we can go to the 1 seed. We mentioned Texas as the overall number 1 seed. We now know they are playing South Carolina. So again, the Bryan brothers and Matthew Neesmith against Scottie Scheffler, Jordan Spieth, and Beau Hossler. Can I mark this off? Do we need to talk about this, Roberto?
Yeah, just look at Roberto over there.
I want to know if you have a thought, Roberto, for your squad here. You're in all Texas gear.
Hook 'em horns, we're on to Cincinnati.
All right, Texas. Moving on. Let's go. Let's stick with this portion of the bracket, which we're going to call the South region, I believe, because Texas has the first choice. They're going to be in the South region. UNLV against SMU. This is our first 5-4 matchup. The SMU Mustangs are the 4 seed. Bryson DeChambeau playing with his former college teammates, Austin Smotherman and Harry Higgs. You could convince me Kelly Craft deserved a spot here, but we're keeping the big rig in for the content purposes here. They're playing against UNLV, Adam Scott, who admittedly is down right now, Kurt Kitayama, who is admittedly down right now, Garrick Higo, who is probably up right now. I kept Taylor Montgomery off this list. You could make the argument for Montgomery. I'm going a little bit with the last year and some experience on this team. Let's start with you, Myan. What about this? This is going to be a tight matchup. This is the 16 and 17 overall seeds.
It is tight. I think when you look at SMU, they're going to have a lot of camaraderie, those 3 having played in college together. Obviously, you've got Bryson, the big bomber. And as the story goes, when those 3 were in college, the coaches would tell them during the practice rounds, go watch Austin, because what he does is what you're supposed to do. He is a flusher of the golf ball, has a beautiful golf swing, but just hasn't been in the best form as of late. Same for Harry Higgs. So I lean towards UNLV. I know Adam Scott has had an up and down year, but a couple of top 20 finishes on the PGA Tour this year. Kurt Kitayama got Bay Hilled last week in his return to Central Florida, but he's still proven that he can win and defeat some of the big boys. And yeah, Gary Kigo's got good form. I love Taylor Montgomery, and especially when that putter gets rolling for him. So it's tough to see him coming off the bench there for the running Rebels. But when you got the smooth lefty who's playing well right now, and he's won on the PGA Tour. So I like UNLV here.
I agree with you, Myan. I got UNLV here. They got the depth on their team. Bryson's the best golfer among these guys, but I can make an argument that not only are the 3 next best golfers, but maybe the 6 next best golfers are all UNLV Rebels. They can all play.
I just want to for the people out there, we're just going with the 3-man teams. Mm-hmm. We're forgetting the bench. We're forgetting how guys played in college. It's what I need to keep you in line here, Roberto. But go on with the argument.
Smotherman and Higgs as your 2 and 3 for SMU. Both lost their card last year, not playing very well right now. I think it's as easy as saying those 2 guys have to win a point. I don't trust them to. Give me the running Rebels.
Bryson is going to be incredibly disappointed. But again, that's you guys, 2 of you right there. Doesn't matter what I have to say. UNLV is moving on. By the way, I didn't realize this. They're only the running Rebels in basketball, not in other sports. They're just the Rebels. That surprised me. Our next matchup. This is going to be a tough one to swallow. Florida State against Northwestern. Florida State is a 3 seed. I'm sure there will be people that will be saying that I should have made them a 2 seed. Brooks Koepka, the resurgent Daniel Berger, and I have Vincent Norman in over Jonas Blix and Cristobal del Solar, Mr. 57, on the Korn Ferry Tour this year. The Northwestern Wildcats, I will admit, not in the best form right now. Matt Fitzpatrick, Dylan Wu, and David Lipsky, led by head coach Luke Donald. I'll let you guys crush me on this. Roberto, I feel like you're going to crush me.
It's Florida State.
Matt Fitzpatrick, we're talking about it. He's not in the best of form right now, but Fitz, you could argue could be, I can't make the argument over him over Brooks. Myan?
No, I'm with you. I think it's the Knowles pretty clearing away here on this one. Unfortunately for you, Jeff, which by the way, Fitz got like a cup of coffee in Evanston before he turned pro.
He was there for a full 2 quarters in the quarter system. One half a college golf season. Followed Luke Donald's footsteps to play for Pat Goss. But I think you guys are right. I'll tell you what, Chris Collins has the Cats in back-to-back tournaments. We've got them in this inaugural bracket. It's a good time to be a Northwestern sports fan, but I don't think they have the firepower to get past Koepka, Berger, and Vincent Norman, who we were talking about, Cameron Champ and Kyle Berkshire. This is another guy that smashes the golf ball. So Florida State moving on to the second round. Rounding out the south section of this bracket, Georgia Tech and UCLA. This could be an interesting one, a 7-2 matchup. UCLA, we mentioned Patrick Cantlay, Jake Knapp, Kevin Chappell, a little loose with that third wheel, despite how hot Cantlay and Jake Knapp are right now. On the other side, Georgia Tech could have gone a lot of ways with this. Matt Kuchar, Chesson Hadley. I decided at the last minute to move Stuart Sink to the bench for Christo Lamprecht, part of that outstanding Georgia Tech team in the NCAA championships last year, one of the top amateurs in the world. Can Georgia Tech, with that mix of Kuchar and Lamprecht, generational talent, how do they stack up against UCLA, Roberto?
UCLA has the 2 best golfers right now. I got to lean with them, with Knapp and Cantlay. Even if Cantlay will underwhelm at Augusta, he is far and away number 1 among these 6.
I'm in full agreement there. Christo Lamprecht is actually, I just checked, he's leading the PGA Tour U rankings right now. So we could see him with the tour card pretty soon as he tries to lead the Yellow Jackets to a late run in the college golf season. I mean, he's huge, like 6'7", gigantic golfer, and nice as can be. But unfortunately, that is not going to be enough to win the match against the Big Bad Bruins.
Christo Lamprecht, just a big shout out. Low amateur at the Open Championship last year, and he will be at Augusta National because he won the Amateur Championship last year. So we're going to see this in real action, but it is UCLA moving on. So not all chalk in this section. The 5 seed, UNLV, gets our first main draw upset as we move. Let's move across to that. Let's go we'll stick on this side of the bracket. We'll go to the other 1 seed here, Myan. The Georgia Bulldogs, Brian Harman, Chris Kirk, and Russell Henley taking on, how about this? I didn't even plan for this. The Augusta Jaguars. This is a Patrick Reed revenge game. Got kicked out of Georgia, went to Augusta State, won a national championship with Henrik Norlander, and we have Vaughn Taylor making up this team. Can Patrick Reed strike magic twice?
No. Look, I mean, Chris Hack has built a factory to the PGA Tour in Athens. We could have 4 Georgia teams in this tournament with different seeds, and I don't think there'd be any complaints. You can say that about a number of other really good schools and college programs in there as well. But no, give me the Dogs. I mean, Chris Kirk already a winner this year. Russell Henley at top 5 last week at Bay Hill. Brian Harman, the champion golfer of the year. They're going to steamroll their way into round 2.
Let's move on.
Okay, Georgia. Moving on to round 2. Moving up here, again, this should be a dominant win, but I want to hear, this is probably a good one to analyze a little bit. Alabama, I have as a 2 seed, maybe a little loose. Justin Thomas, definitely resurgent again this year. He's joined by a resurgent Bud Cauley, one of his good friends, and Nick Dunlap, a winner already this year. Like I said, off the top, Davis Riley, Lee Hodges, Robbie Shelton, Trey Mullinax. You can make some arguments for players here against the Texas Tech team that is trying to be carried by Ludwig Oberg, playing with Mito Pereira. The problem is the third guy, you got to reach for Hurley Long, who plays out in Europe. Now, his name did pop up this year because when Wyndham Clark set the course record at Pebble Beach, he did beat Hurley Long's score from a collegiate event when he was at Texas Tech. So there's some buzz around this Texas Tech team. But do the Tide, are they able to hold him off, Roberto?
No, give me the upset. Give me Mito and Ludwig Oberg. JT is balling out. He's probably the best golfer among these guys right now, but it's not inconceivable that we haven't discussed. I think we've been saying 1 versus 1, 2 versus 2, 3 versus 3. You could lay the sacrificial lamb out there against JT. That's what I would do. But either way, I think Oberg is good enough to clip JT. Dunlap had a great week, but overall, I think I've still got Mito ahead of him, and Bud Cauley's a great story. If you mix up the matchups, I still see a path for the Red Raiders here. Give me some of their youth. Give me a Mito Pereira revenge spot against Justin Thomas.
Wow. Myan, thoughts?
He's pulling at my heartstrings there, Roberto, because I want to agree so badly, but I just don't know that I can send the Tide home in the first round, as much as that pains an SEC guy to say. Usually not pulling for Alabama there, but no, I think Nick Dunlap, if you get him in that match play scenario, could be maybe a little more comfortable than trying to learn all these courses for the first time. I get it, Augusta's Augusta or wherever he might be playing, so the heart rate should be up some. But Justin Thomas is a vet. He's got all the experience you want in the world, and I think he'll have his guys ready to play. I do like Mito, and I like the idea of the revenge game that you said. I would love to see the camera's reaction on him when he saw JT's toast at the champions dinner at the PGA Championship, saying, "Hey, without Mito, this wouldn't have been possible." So maybe that's a little bit of bulletin board material for sure. But as it relates to the golf course, I just don't know that it's enough in my mind for them to pull it off.
While we're talking, Mito Pereira is coming off. Let's see, how do you even play? A 48th place finish on Live Golf. So the thing is, I think Roberto has made a compelling argument for the upset. And I think that Ludwig, you can make a lot of arguments for Ludwig. For me, the issue is that Mito Pereira right now, I believe he's 52nd on Live Golf. So if this was Mito Pereira of a year ago, of 2 years ago, I think there's a stronger Texas Tech argument. But right now, Mito Pereira is not doing it on Live Golf. So the Tide get a scare. I mean, this is one of those 53-52 wins in the first round. This is a split decision, but the Tide are going to move on and really have to sweat this out moving forward. They're going to be vulnerable going forward. Let's move to the 3-6 matchup here. The Illinois Fighting Illini against the Vanderbilt Commodores. This is another strong matchup. Illinois, Thomas Dietrich, Nick Hardy, Thomas Peters. I wanted to put Adrian Dumonte-Chassard on there, but he is not getting it done right now at the PGA Tour level. I would have expected him on here, but I'm going to go with some of the veterans out there. Nick Hardy, a first-time winner last year on the PGA Tour, playing with 2 of the 3 Illinois Belgians. And then Vanderbilt, Luke List, Will Gordon, and another collegiate player, Gordon Sargent, rounding out this Vanderbilt team. Brandt Snedeker, hard to leave off a FedEx Cup champion, but he looks lost right now on the PGA Tour. So this is another strong matchup. Myan, we'll start with you.
Well, pound for pound, this Vanderbilt team might have the most distance out of anyone in the field. You've got some guys who can just bomb it. I mean, Luke List hits it a long way. Will Gordon is not short by any means. And then you've got Gordon Sargent, which if you're listening to this and you haven't seen Gordon Sargent hit a golf ball, look out. I mean, it comes with a trail of smoke when it leaves the club face. It is incredible to watch him play. And he does have his PGA Tour card through PGA Tour U accelerated. So he was the first one to ever earn that. So he can be out on tour very quickly if he wants to be. So I love all that promise. I think Luke List, for as streaky as he can be with the putter, has found the knack to sometimes make those long ones late. He won that gigantic 5-man playoff in Jackson, Mississippi back in October with the 45, 50-footer on the first playoff hole. So I'm leaning towards the Commodores. I think that they might beat the Fighting Belgians over there in Champaign. But it's been really cool to see the growth of Illinois and the pipeline they've built from, Metro Brussels to America's heartland.
So who's your pick?
Vanderbilt.
Okay. He's going SEC, Roberto.
So last year, Nick Hardy was supposed to play with Thomas Dietrich in the Zurich Classic of New Orleans, a 2-man PGA Tour event, but Ryder Cup captain Luke Donald said he wanted to see Dietrich play with somebody else. So eventually they swapped out Davis Riley for Dietrich, and Davis Riley and Nick Hardy go on to win it all. If that switch doesn't happen, does Thomas Dietrich have a win? Does Nick Hardy have his only win on the PGA Tour? I don't know. The only player among these guys who has a win on the PGA Tour as an individual is Luke List, I believe, and he's got 2. He's got the big-time one at Torrey Pines. I've got the advantage to the Vanderbilt Commodores here. I like him. I like the upside with Gordon Sargent, who can absolutely murder the golf ball. And give me Will Gordon. Maybe he gets hot, pops a couple birdies out there. He can make a trillion bogeys out there too. But hopefully he gets enough birdies that he saves those bogeys for the holes he doesn't have to play. Give me the Commodores in a mild upset.
Wow. I'll tell you what, as I put this together, I thought Illinois, like you said, Myan, about the pipeline. I was thinking, is Illinois really a contender to, upset a 2 or even a 1 seed down the road? Instead, Illinois is going to go out in the first round. I'm looking at Thomas Peters right now, probably another example of a guy who he tied for 48th with Mito Pereira this past week as we're talking, or 2 weeks ago or last week in Hong Kong on Live Golf. Not quite getting it done so far. He's 49th on Live Golf this year, so maybe another guy that's trailed off on Live Golf. So it's going to be Vanderbilt, the Commodores, getting the upset. As a Northwestern fan, this doesn't break my heart. It just surprises me when I made these rankings, how things go. To finish off this section of the draw, which, by the way, is the East, I'm calling it, with Georgia, Oregon and Stanford. Here we go, Roberto. Pac-12 matchup between the Oregon Ducks, led by Wyndham Clark, who is on fire right now. He's going to have to carry the squad because Aaron Wise is still coming back into form. Just came back. He was was right in the cusp of that President's Cup team 2 years ago. Not quite in the form that you'd expect from a former Rookie of the Year. Playing with Norman Zhang rounding out this team. Another guy who was an outstanding amateur who's now finally getting his PGA Tour cracks. On the other side of this matchup with Stanford, with your Stanford Cardinal, one Tiger Woods playing alongside Patrick Rodgers, and I have Maverick McNeely in and Brandon Wu out. I'll let you first tell me if I made the right decision with the lineup, and don't tell me Brandon Wu should be in instead of Tiger, because I'm taking Tiger every time when I'm creating this team. Again, we're talking about Tiger right now. We're talking about players not when they were in college, not their prime right now. Do you like this Stanford team? Can they pull off the upset against Oregon?
I like the Cardinal for the upset against the Ducks. The Cardinal have not the best player. Obviously, that's Wyndham Clark right now. Tiger Woods at Augusta. I think he's the second best player among this group. And then Patrick Rodgers, Maverick McNeely. Give me those two as the next two best. I think that Oregon, while Aaron Wise a couple years ago would have been there, he's still working his way back. Wish him nothing but the best. I know he's been battling some mental health issues, so excited to see him return. But right now, I can't give it to him. Norman Cheong, also rookie on the PGA Tour. I got to give the advantage to the Cardinal. They also have more depth, like you said. Brandon Wu, if this is being played
we're not
Vidanta Vallarta,
if we're
at Vidanta Vallarta, he's the best player.
We're not doing this. Just the three-man team that we're trotting out there. You can't tell me, this is it's like an Olympic sport. It's we're going with the lineup, and that's what we're going with. I understand. I understand what you're saying with the depth. I'll make the argument before mine goes for Oregon that, because maybe I've been imagining this like March Madness, where you can have one player who just carries the team. And I know that's harder in golf, but what Wyndham Clark is doing right now, we're talking about the first place finish at Pebble Beach. We're talking about a second place finish at Bay Hill. We're talking about a guy who just won the U.S. Open and won at Quail Hollow last year. I mean, he's, you can tell me right now that he's the second best player in the world if you throw out the rankings in terms of how he's playing right now. I don't think that's I think Daniel Rappaport posed the question on Twitter this week. Who's the second best player in the world right now? Tell me it's not Wyndham Clark. So I still wonder if he can pull this together, if there's really any, enough depth there with Stanford. I know McNeely's playing much better on his major medical right now. Myan, this is a split decision right now. Where are you going?
Yeah, I could actually be convinced either way here. I look at the depth for Stanford, and I'm putting these matchups together in my head. I'm like, nobody wants to face Tiger. I don't care what form he's in. If you show up with a bag of fries,
Wyndham Clark in the singles match.
Yeah, I mean, Wyndham might have to show up with some animal style fries to scare Tiger off. That might be the only way that you could get Tiger Woods to flinch. I mean, he could play left-handed, and I'm still partial to take Tiger, even though he's coming off some, just bad form. I mean, last time that you heard anything from him was the Seminole Pro Member a couple weeks ago, and his team finished near the bottom of that leaderboard, and really haven't heard anything from Tiger's camp since on the state of his game. But I mean, he's Tiger Woods, man. When you talk about the momentum and a guy carrying you to the end, and I know that was about Wyndham Clark, I'm like, that could be about Tiger. This guy could just show up and just kick everyone's butt. And Patrick Rodgers has played well. He's had a couple top 25 finishes this season. Well. And Maverick McNeely went out in his first start back, one of his first start back, got enough FedEx Cup points to fulfill that major medical, and has kind of run with it. Had a top 10 in Phoenix and a couple other top 25s this year. So I just think on the consistency scale across the board, Stanford can take it. I mean, dude, it's Tiger. I'm not sending him packing.
All right.
First round.
Tiger survives a 2-1 decision. It's a good matchup between Stanford and Oregon. That's the first round of one half of the bracket. Let's move over to the other side. Let's go up to the Oklahoma State Cowboys. This is the Midwest region, as you guys can imagine. I'm picking the way the committee would pick this. So Oklahoma State goes to the Midwest. They are taking on the Purdue Boilermakers in the first round. To remind you, Oklahoma State, their roster is Victor Hovland, Ricky Fowler, and Taylor Gooch, taking on Adam Schenk, Tyler Duncan, and Shiv Kapoor. I think we can move on from this pretty quickly, guys.
Agreed.
Let's just put Oklahoma State in. We'll get back to them in a moment when they have some real formidable competitors. Let's go right to the 5-4 matchup here. This is, I think, a tight matchup. The Virginia Cavaliers and the Kent State Golden Flash. If you don't know Kent State and why they're a 4 seed, the all-Canadian team of Corey Connors, Mackenzie Hughes, and Taylor Pendrith. Herb Page is the coach out at Kent State. He's a Canadian. He recruits Canadians. All 3 of those players could be at the President's Cup at Royal Montreal this year. And they're taking on a UVA team of Denny McCarthy, combined with 2 guys up from the Korn Ferry Tour this year, Ben Coles and Jimmy Stanger, who just came off, both of them, outstanding performances at the Puerto Rico Open. Does that alternate event do enough, Myan, to make you take the Cavaliers in the upset?
It does not, because I think just that seaside course in Puerto Rico is a little different than the test they'd faced in our hypothetical matchup here. I must say, though, if this was like March Madness on the hardwood using these 3-man teams, Virginia could go all the way. Denny can shoot it. I mean, this guy is a hooper. Denny McCarthy can flat out ball. But unfortunately, even with as good as that putter is for Denny, I just don't think it's enough to stop the Golden Flashes. I think that Canadian contingent's going to be one that is really motivated by the President's Cup and what Mike Weir's going to have to decide come September or late August. So because of that, it's some of that iron sharpens iron. I think we're going to see a really good year across the board from the Canadians. Already have seen that from Nick Taylor. I know he's not a part of the Kent State group, but forgive me, Kent State here.
We'll get to Nick Taylor in a second. I think Taylor Pendrith could post Denny McCarthy up at least. Roberto, is this is Tony Bennett's squad out in the first round?
Yeah, I think they're going to have to shoot for the national championship next year because they're going out in the first round this year. I like the team that has the winners on the PGA Tour, the Golden Flashes, Corey Connors, Mackenzie Hughes, Taylor Pendrith. I think you got 3 of the 4 best golfers among the 6. So give me the Golden Flashes by wider margin than I would have thought.
All right, Kent State getting it done over UVA, not UMBC, but Kent State with the win. Now we get to Nick Taylor and the Washington Huskies taking on San Diego State, the Aztecs. This is a good West Coast matchup as part of our Midwest bracket. So Washington, for those who might not know, Nick Taylor leading the way. Maybe you didn't expect that at the beginning of the year. Maybe you didn't expect that a year ago. He's the top player on this squad with Joel Damon and a resurgent CT Pan, who is red hot right now. Carl Yuan, you could have probably made the argument a few weeks ago he should be in over CT. Joel, we're keeping Joel in. That is based on, I think, who you would, if you just didn't look at the stats and said, I need a gamer, a guy who's been there before, we're going to put Joel on this squad. On the other side, San Diego State, Xander Schauffele is trying to lift up this team with J.J. Spawn and Scott Piercy. The question, Roberto, is can Xander carry the squad himself?
I don't think so. I got to give the edge to the other side with Washington. I like Nick Taylor, who's really hot right now. CT Pan, as you said, is in good form. Joel Damon can put pressure on the other side. The putter is a big weakness for him, but I think I have to give the edge to the Huskies. It looks like Scott Piercy is definitely by far the worst player right now among these guys, and J.J. Spawn has been in better form before.
Scott Piercy's soul is somewhere in the 10,000 lakes of Minnesota still after that 3M Open a couple
Jeff,
of years
I'll also
ago.
add, yeah, that what a collapse. Couldn't have happened to somebody who was less of a fan favorite. Looking at the recent results for J.J. Spawn, though, 5 missed cuts in 6 starts so far. The only time that he's made a cut was when there wasn't a cut at the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Did beat 26 golfers that week, but overall not super inspiring. So maybe a year ago or at that 3M Open a couple of years ago, you could have convinced me otherwise. But right now, I think you've got to go with the Huskies.
Maybe he'll respawn somewhere. Myan, I assume you're in agreement with that?
I am. I mean, Nick Taylor, gosh, you talk about pressure putts. This guy just buries all of them, it feels like, in recent memory. And then I think part of the fan factor, I just want to see Joel and Gino out there yucking it up. And And I want to see fluff on the back for CT Penn, Mike Cowan out there looping. So for those stories, along with Nick Taylor's big game prowess, I'm going with the Huskies.
Yeah, shout out to Jim Furyk and the University of Arizona, which were actually cut one of the last teams out from this. Myan, I know you wanted your guy, Rory Sabatini, in here with Nate Lashley and Trevor Werbelow, but they were the first team cut from this. Let's go to this incredible. This is Bobby Hurley Jr. against John Shire, Arizona State and Duke. Duke is the 7 seed in this case. Arizona State is the 2 seed. We touched on them off the top. Phil Mickelson, John Rahm, and Grayson Murray. They definitely have a unique sliver of fans who are following this Sun Devils team, taking on a Duke squad that might sneak up on you. Alex Smalley, Adam Long, and Kevin Streelman. A couple of wily vets on that team. Max Gracerman was also considered. Myan, does Duke have a little magic in this?
No, I think the Cameron Crazies just are going to have to camp out some more for a win in Jeff's March Madness golf bracket. Give me Arizona State here. You're right. It's a small sliver of fans, but boy, are they passionate. I think those Sun Devil fans will be out there, might be the loudest ones on the golf course. So no, I think John Rahm, Phil Mickelson, Grayson Murray are moving on.
Before we eliminate this Duke team, Roberto, any thoughts on Alex Smalley and the crew?
I don't think they can handle the curtain of distraction. Give me the Sun Devils.
All these fans have moved from TPC Scottsdale to our hypothetical March Madness bracket. So Arizona State is going to move on in the Midwest. Let's finish out this first round in the West. The California Golden Bears. I said they're the number 2 overall seed, led by Max Homa, Collin Morikawa, and Ben On taking on. We took North Texas, Carlos Ortiz, Sebastian Munoz, and Kyle Berkshire. I'm not gonna get too deep into this. Let's just give Cal. We'll get to Cal in a second. We're putting the 1 seeds through. Let's move on to a closer matchup. 4 versus 5. Oklahoma, Arkansas. What used to be a Big 12 matchup. A very traditional. Well, actually, not what used to be a Big 12 matchup. I guess Arkansas is in the SEC, so forget I said anything. But a good matchup here between Oklahoma's squad of Chris Gotterup, a Rutgers transfer, Abraham Answer, and Anthony Kim, who I move into the lineup, taking out Max McGreevy at the last minute to take on this Arkansas team of Taylor Moore, Nico Echeverria, and David Lingmerth. Myan, where are you going here?
Ooh, well, I think Arkansas has some depth there. David Lingmerth has not been playing good golf.
He is hurt. He is hurt
right.
for what it's worth right now.
Right, and so
we're going to say he's healthy.
Okay, even healthy David Lingmerth, I think it could be tricky. Nico's been playing some pretty decent golf over the last month, fighting his swing some, but when he figures it out and it's all clicking, it's fun to watch. And he has won on the PGA Tour, so you got that going for you. I like Taylor Moore in his game, but give me the Sooners. Abraham Answer coming off a victory in Hong Kong for LIV. Chris Gotterup is kind of one of those guys you want in match play, can just play some bully ball and get out there and hit it a long way. And then Anthony Kim, I mean, if he gets fit for clubs and maybe gets on a TrackMan before this match goes down, who knows? He might shoot 56. 65 playing with some old sticks and just whacking around for the first time in a dozen years. That's going to be fun to watch. So give me the Sooners.
I don't feel very strongly about this one. You can make an argument that Taylor Moore or Abe Answer is the best golfer. I think you can make an argument that Nico or Gotterup is the second best. I lean toward Gotterup in that matchup. I lean toward Answer. I lean toward Answer because he just got a win this past weekend on LIV. Anthony Kim, ultimate wild card, but so is David Lingmerth. I don't feel super strongly. I think this is a toss-up. I think this will be a really interesting one to watch, but I'll give the edge to the Sooners.
This is one of those, like, you're sitting there, and we'll give Oklahoma the win here. You're sitting there with your buddy watching March Madness, and you're like, I took Oklahoma, I took Alabama. Like, no rhyme or reason. No one probably thinks this team wins the second round game, but this is like the classic 8-9 matchup that you're watching religiously to make sure your bracket stays perfect on the first day. when this team isn't going very far. Let's move on up to Florida against Pepperdine. Florida, great golf school. Maybe not its best, maybe not in its peak form right now on the PGA Tour. Billy Horschel, Camilo Villegas, and Tyson Alexander, are the 6th seed. I would have thought Alejandro Tosti would break Tyson Alexander's spot at the start of the season, but he really hasn't done it so far. Fred Biondi is waiting in the wing to join this group. Matt Every is the coach we're making him of this team. Taking on a Pepperdine squad of Sahith Theegala and Andrew Putnam. And when I started doing this, I thought, well, can I find a third guy for Pepperdine? And then Joe Highsmith pops up last week in Puerto Rico to make a really formidable number 3 seed out of the Pepperdine Waves. Roberto, you're on the West Coast. How good is Pepperdine?
Well, I got to work the American Express for PGA Tour Live featured holes earlier this season, and I got to call a hole-in-one for Joe Highsmith there on the 13th. So I'm going to lean with the Waves. Sahith is the best golfer among these guys. Putnam in match play, I want his putter on my side, and Highsmith is in decent form. He stripes the ball. It doesn't hit the ball a mile, but I like that. I think he's, as a number 3 here, I give him a significant edge over Tyson Alexander, so give me the Waves.
He did have a shank that went viral last week on Sunday, but I'm leaning Pepperdine too. Obviously, Sahith being the best player right now in this group. Myan, what do you think? And Putnam's great too, by the way.
Give me the Waves. All 3 of those guys had top 10s their last event on the PGA Tour. Putnam and Theegala backdoored their way into a top 10 at Bay Hill, which is a tricky test. And despite that viral shank, Joe Highsmith still finishing a tie for 6th. I like his swagger, big bucket hat, smooth lefty swing, wears a lot of sunscreen, protects his skin. Like it's just fun to watch, and he's a really good guy. So I think despite the fighting Matt Everys, I think Coach Every would have that team ready to go. I mean, he can motivate when you need him to motivate, and I love Matt. I know you just had him on the pod recently, Jeff, but unfortunately, I think they're going to have to worry about next year because they're not advancing this season.
All right, Pepperdine. They've created a program out there. Who wants to go play golf in Malibu? Probably everyone. And who will they play in the second round? Our last matchup is Wake Forest against Clemson. Again, I just put in the seeds. I didn't even look at this. Like, I just put this in with the S-curve. This is a great, Carolinas ACC matchup. Wake Forest, that is a full lineup of Will Zalatoris, Cameron Young, and Webb Simpson. How vulnerable are they? The Clemson Tigers on the other side, Lucas Glover, Ben Martin, and the doctor, Doc Redman. There's a world, Myan, maybe a couple years ago where Clemson probably competes before we eliminate them. Any thoughts on Lucas Glover and the boys?
No, I mean, it always baffles my mind that the guy named Glover doesn't wear gloves. But other than that, no other big thoughts. I think Wake Forest right now, Will Zalatoris just looks like he's returning to that world-class form with his newly rebuilt golf swing. The long putter looks great. I know a little bit of a disappointment over the weekend, the last 20 holes or so at Bay Hill, but it's enough to move on despite Cameron Young and Webb Simpson and where they are right now.
Roberto, I mean, you could have told me this team probably could have been a 1 seed 2 years ago when Webb was in a little bit better form. As we move forward, what's your early take on Wake Forest, who I assume you're taking?
They're going to be really tough to beat. You mentioned Cam Young's playing great. Will Zalatoris fixed that issue with his back and his swing. Webb Simpson has a lot of experience at Augusta National, top 20s for 4 straight years between 2018 and 2021. So they're a dark horse as a number 2 seed, because I guess you got to be a number 1 seed.
All right, that's our first round. The way I want to do the next set of rounds, let's get to the final 4. So let's finish off some of the brackets. Again, we're at roughly the hour mark, so appreciate everyone who's with us as we're now getting into the thick of the big matchups here. We've got Texas and UNLV. UNLV with the upset in the first round. Scheffler, Spieth, Hostler taking on a UNLV squad that you guys were hyped about. Adam Scott, Kurt Kitayama, and Garrick Higo. We'll start with Roberto. Or, can UNLV keep it going here?
This is one where on paper it's Texas all the way. I think in practice UNLV has a puncher's chance. Who knows? Scottie Scheffler's putter might go a little cold, but overall, Jordan Spieth at Augusta National, you got to give him the edge. Scottie Scheffler can two-putt all day and still win his matchup here. Longhorns should roll.
Texas, Myan.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, Roberto. I think Texas rolls on to the next round. Two of those three guys have green jackets, so I think that alone is enough to keep them going.
All right, a closer matchup coming up. Florida State, UCLA. UCLA, we've talked about Patrick Cantlay, Jake Knapp. Right there, if you just were doing duos, the way that they're playing right now, got to be one of the top duos. Playing with Kevin Chappell, though, who's trying to get PGA Tour starts by way right now of the past champions category against a Florida State team with Brooks Koepka, a healthy Daniel Berger, and the big hitting Vincent Norman. Myan, this is a narrow 2-3 matchup. Who you got?
It is tight. I think Florida State has more when it comes to depth on that, but if you're just trying to win two out of those three matches, right now, I'm leaning towards.
Are you going to poke the bear? You going to poke Brooks right now?
No, the more I look at these names, I'm like, I just cannot send Brooks Koepka home early. And I like Vincent Norman's game a lot. He won last season on the PGA Tour. He's off to a decent start. He's got Oberg as his tenant at his house in Tallahassee. So, some of that magic just has to rub off when they get some time home together. I know Daniel Berger has battled back from injury and hasn't shown the best form, but if we're talking peak Daniel Berger, full health, this is a guy that was one of the top players in the world. So if he can rekindle even some of that, I think it's enough to stifle UCLA. But I love what Jake Knapp does. I think that win in Mexico really elevated him, obviously, to the big scale for everyone to see. But he's still learning a lot. It's his first full season out here on the PGA Tour, and so give me the experience of Florida State.
All right, Florida State, Roberto, can they complete the 3-2 upset?
Yes, they can. Daniel Berger is a wild card here, but he's got upside that I think is higher than the number 2 and 3 guys for UCLA. I also think Vincent Norman, kind of similar to a Jake Knapp, dude who can absolutely mash the ball. Vincent Norman, however, not a great putter. I do still think Brooks Koepka is the best golfer here, and if I'm putting my money on someone in a one-on-one matchup, give me Brooks Koepka as one of the top 2 or 3 golfers that I would choose in the world. So I'm riding with Brooks, guy who nearly won the Masters last year. I think he and the Knowles roll here.
I like that this is kind of like the way you guys have treated Brooks and Tiger in this conversation is like when push comes to shove, it's sort of a Tom Izzo March Madness sort of like Jim Boeheim-esque. It's like, oh, don't bet against the big names when they get to March Madness. They can pack a punch even if they didn't do it during the regular season. So Florida State moves on. And I want to complete this region. Texas against Florida State. This is a heavyweight matchup. Let's start with you, Roberto. Can Texas get to the Final Four?
Yeah, even though the Gim Reaper has an argument for the number 3 seed on the Horns, I'd have to give the Horns the victory here. They've got more depth than Florida State. For Florida State, if Brooks Koepka doesn't pull off the point against whoever you match him up with, Scottie Scheffler, Jordan Spieth, or Bo Hostler, I don't really see a path to victory. They need that point. I think that's very much in doubt. You can't give anybody an edge over Scottie Scheffler right now. He just learned how to putt. So he could make me look really bad by putting poorly this weekend at TPC Sawgrass, but got to give the edge to Scheffler. Like you said, Myan, these guys have 2 green jackets against 0 in this matchup again. I think you got to go with the Longhorns.
I know Roberto's relying on the Augusta argument a lot right now, Myan. You just made a compelling argument for Florida State in the last round. Is there a compelling argument? Are you going to go against Brooks this time around?
I would not be at all surprised to see Brooks handle his business in this matchup and take care of things for Florida State. But I think just the other guys, that depth of Texas, and gosh, Scottie Scheffler is playing a different game right now. I mean, it was unreal. His final round at the Arnold Palmer Invitational was just ridiculous. I know the putter finally cooperated, but even if he just puts average, he's still carding top 10 finishes with his eyes shut. That's how good the ball striking has been. So there's something to that big mallet putter. Jordan Spieth can be, a wild card at times. Obviously, I think his floor is really high. He's a world-class player, but he does have some loose shots in him. But I think that's where Michael Greller can come in this March Madness scenario and maybe talk him into reality and some safe shots and say, Jordan, we don't need to pull up from the logo. You got Scottie inside, just beat him for the layup. Yeah, no, I'm going with Texas.
All right, Texas is going to move on, but respect to Florida State and everything that they brought there. Also, we're talking this up. Scottie Scheffler and Brooks Koepka put together one of the all-time worst performances as a match play team together last year in the Ryder Cup. Feels like that's relevant here. Just before we move on from this, Roberto, you talked about Doug Ghim. I put in Beau Hossler. Basically, I know Doug Ghim is having a stronger year this year than last year. My Beau Hossler argument was over the course of the last 12 months, Beau Hossler has been considerably the better player. Do you want to retroactively put Doug Ghim on this team instead of Beau Hossler?
No, I think I'd rather have Beau Hossler and his putter in a match play scenario. I think Beau's played some solid golf this year as well. I think you can make the argument that both those guys are playing some of their best golf of their career in the last few months. I think it's really splitting hairs, but we'll give it to Beau.
All right, Texas comes out of the South. Moving on to the East, Georgia, Stanford, Myan Patel versus Roberto Arguello. Arguello. Am I getting that right finally?
There you go.
I'm working on my pronunciations. Georgia, all right, versus Stanford. We'll start with Myan being the favorite here with Georgia. What do you see out of this matchup? Harm, Kirk, Henley taking on McNeely, Rogers, and Eldrick Taunt Woods.
Gosh, well, I see a lot of team chemistry in that Georgia locker room over there. Those are guys that are really tight. They'll go to battle for each other. There's a bit of a generational difference on the Stanford sideline, so I don't know how well they mesh. Granted, they'll all go out there and I'm sure play well, but when you're trying to win, more matches than the other side, I think Georgia gets it done. Russell Henley right now is playing really well. He's always been a fairly accurate driver of the golf ball. Was okay at Bay Hill, was fighting his golf swing some, but the putter finally cooperated for him. And even with kind of a so-so weekend, still finishes in the top 5 there. Chris Kirk is just a great golf swing to watch. That syrupy draw, put it on repeat, and when it's clicking, it goes well. And I like Brian Harman because he's a guy that just will annoy you and pester you. I mean, he called himself a pretty tough out, right? Like he's a guy, he's going to foul off 6-7 pitches. And even if it's a ground out, like you are annoyed because you had to spend that much time putting out that flame. So give me Georgia here. I just like the depth of the dogs. And unfortunately, as much as I would love to see Tiger Woods advance, I think, the opening round is as far as it goes.
He's like David Eckstein in like the 2006 MLB playoffs.
Yeah.
Roberto, are you going to make an argument for your boys, or are you throwing up the white flag?
I think the dogs are barking in this one. Brian Harman, Chris Kirk, both guys who move the ball from right to left. That works at Augusta National. Tiger, I'll give him 1 point. He takes down one of the other guys, but at the end of the day, Georgia's got the edge in the other matchup, so give me the dogs here, unfortunately, for the Cardinal.
Well, good, because even if you said Stanford, I was going to take Georgia. So Tiger gets the second round exit. I think this is going to be an outstanding matchup based on your guys' first arguments. Alabama, Vanderbilt. Alabama's a 2 seed. Justin Thomas, Nick Dunlap, Bud Cauley taking on this Vanderbilt hitters-only lineup of Will Gordon, Luke List, and Gordon Sargent. Roberto, do we have a big upset here?
I think this one's really tough. I got to give Justin Thomas a point here. And then looking at the other 2 guys on his team, Nick Dunlap and Bud Cauley, I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to go with Bama here. It's tight. I think they're a vulnerable 2 seed, but they got the weakest 3 seed and a weaker 6 seed in their second round matchup potentially. So I got to give Nick Dunlap, a guy who has proven that he can get it done in match play. at the USAM. And in his one time contending on the PGA Tour, makes the clutch 7-footer to win the tournament, stares down Alcatraz, stares down the San Andreas Fault over there on the West Coast. So give me Bama here, although I think I got to give the Dogs a significant edge over them in the Elite Eight.
Well, we'll get to that in a sec. He wants Bama, Myan. Do they have enough? And Nick Dunlap, remember, will play in the Masters this year as the U.S. Amateur champion.
Yeah, I think that match play point that Roberto made is a great one about Nick Dunlap, because he and Gordon Sargent are the same age. They've played a lot of these really prestigious amateur events, Walker Cups together, and things like that. And so head to head, Sargent could easily clip Dunlap in that matchup. But I think Nick Dunlap and the experience he's gained in his short time on the PGA Tour, especially that Sunday out at the American Express, going toe-to-toe with Justin Thomas, Sam Burns, and just flat-out beating them, especially after rinsing one early in his final round. I think that's a lot of confidence you can dip back to, along with that 7-footer that his mom could have made, according to his caddy there on the final green. And then Justin Thomas is another one of those guys that I think you just don't send home early because I think he can just kind of grind it out and bring the Tide to a victory here.
We should mention Nick Dunlap did beat Gordon Sargent on his way to that U.S. Amateur title this year. So I think that is relevant. I think that Vanderbilt and Upstart, a lot of excited fans from Nashville coming to see this matchup, and I think their hearts are broken as normal by Bama.
Fighting Ned Michaels over there. I mean, sorry, Ned.
So Alabama moves on. 1-2 Georgia, Alabama. What do we know? It's Georgia against Alabama in this Elite Eight. Myan, does Georgia get revenge for the SEC championship game in football finally here?
Yeah, well, luckily Nick Saban retired and is now spending his time chatting with you, Jeff. So we don't have to worry about him showing up and trying to motivate this Alabama team. Maybe just getting some swing tips from his good buddy Justin Thomas. No, I mean I think Alabama's good. They're deep, and in a couple of years could be a very big force in this bracket, but give me Georgia. I think the Dogs are moving on.
Dogs on top. Dogs on top.
All right. We've got another one seed moving on. It felt a little not necessarily close with Georgia, but I like the way that there were a couple upsets on that side of the bracket, but Georgia moves on to the Final Four. Moving up, Oklahoma State, Kent State. You guys just made a very compelling argument for Kent State and the Canadians, Roberto. Do they have enough fire to beat a little bit of a reeling Oklahoma State team of Hovland, Fowler, and Gooch right now?
I think they got a good chance. I got to give, because Hovland, I think, is a guaranteed point here, just an absolute striper. You can make an argument that Eckroat could be considered here, a few other guys for Oklahoma State. Fowler's not in great form either. It's going to be close. I think this is the most vulnerable one seed, but I'll give them the edge here in the second round.
Any discrepancies, Myan?
No, I think with Kent State, it would come down to their putting as a team. They're all pretty good ball strikers and can get the ball to the dance floor, but give me Oklahoma State on the greens. And I mean, I will say, does this come with an asterisk? I don't see ETSU in this field. Rory McIlroy was committed to play for the Buccaneers over there. So, maybe we got to rethink this whole thing. But no, I'm with the Cowboys. They ride to the next round.
Wait, is that East Tennessee State?
Yeah, it is. It's an hour and a half from here, which, Seamus Power, ask him about it. He loves it up there because Rory, by way of not going, let Seamus come to the States and go play there.
There are a lot of guys like Stephen Yeager at Chattanooga. Would have loved to see him participate. Graham McDowell at UAB. There are so many good ones. Zach Blair at Brigham Young, but I couldn't get three guys from some of these schools. And besides we had to cut Arizona. Washington against Arizona State. Roberto, to the Pac-12, the OG Pac-12. Washington, I believe now a part of a conference known as the Big Ten. But Washington against Arizona State. Nick Taylor and the boys taking on Jon Rahm. What do we got?
Love Nick Taylor in a match play situation against Jon Rahm, especially where Nick Taylor can kind of thrive off of that underdog role. The crowd be rooting for him, and he does well when the crowds are big. But I got to give the edge to the Sun Devils, especially if we were to write in Kevin Yu for Grayson Murray.
We're not
Phil
writing in
Mickelson
Kevin
here.
Yu.
Kevin Yu, absolute ball striker. Would love his chances as an underdog in a matchup. But I still give the edge to the reigning green jacket winner, Jon Rahm.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement there. And actually, I mean, that underdog thing you were saying about Kevin Yu, I like that with Grayson Murray. He's kind of the me against the world mentality. He won in Hawaii earlier this season, and I think he's a guy that can really form a big chip on his shoulder. And if you put him out there against Nick Taylor, who's got the whole crowd cheering for him, it would not surprise me at all to see Grayson Murray come through and maybe win one of those. But yeah, I'm with the Sun Devils here.
I think the funniest part that you guys are missing is like the same argument that you had for Tiger and Brooks, you could probably have with Phil. You know, who's gonna go against Phil in a match play situation? We haven't seen Phil play a lot of match play in a long time, but I think that is a fun. It's fun to think about Phil against Joel Damon in maybe the number 2 matchup for match play. So we're moving Arizona State on another 1-2. Oklahoma State, Arizona State. You just said Oklahoma State is a potentially vulnerable Myan. I mean, let's go down the line here. You're basically looking at a Victor Hovland, Jon Rahm matchup, Ricky Fowler, Phil Mickelson, Taylor Gooch, Grayson Murray. If that is not compelling TV, I don't know what is. Who gets the edge if we're talking those 3 matchups?
Gosh, well, I'll tell you, I would 100% sign up to watch that because that would be some very entertaining golf. It's tough. I think going on current form at this moment, I don't know where my confidence level lies with Victor Hovland. He's made a couple of changes in coaches.
Phil Mickelson.
Yeah, well, that too. But with Victor Hovland, reigning FedEx Cup champion, I mean, just looked unbeatable last August, especially after that Sunday 61 at the BMW Championship where he set the new course record. But right now, it's just been kind of that tinkering phase. He's playing okay, but he's constantly working on something, and I don't know when that will all click. So you put him up against Jon Rahm, who I'd give the edge to Jon Rahm, even with the way he's playing right now. I know he doesn't have any wins since moving over to LIV, but he's still played relatively well. Ricky Fowler against Phil Mickelson would be interesting to me. You know, they're 2 guys that are pretty friendly. I think there'd be a lot of smiles in that matchup, and honestly, maybe a little bit of a pick 'em. But I like Grayson Murray's attitude, and I think he could best Taylor Gooch there. So I think this is an exit for the one seed Cowboys. Give me Arizona State.
The Sun Devils here, Roberto. Can you make it 2 out of 3 with Arizona State, or is it still Oklahoma State's spot to lose?
Right now, I got to give the edge to the Sun Devils. Jon Rahm is your reigning Masters champion. He hasn't
won
on
the
Masters. Hasn't won on LIV yet, but he hasn't finished worse than 8th. So he's playing really solid golf. Overall, at the Masters, no worse than 27th since 2018. He's played there every year since then. 5 top 9 finishes in his last 6 starts at the Masters. He's got a really high floor. Phil Mickelson had a rough week last week on LIV, but has shown some flashes of life. Finished second here last year. So you got the 2 top guys from the Masters last season, both on their team. Phil just switched to a lab putter, so I got to be optimistic about that in about a month's time once he's a little bit more comfortable. Grayson Murray already has a lab putter, and he filled in the cup from 45 feet at the Sony Open. I think Phil and Grayson Murray as favorites. I'd be worried about them in the early rounds, but if they can survive, they get this deep as underdogs against limping Ricky Fowler and Taylor Gooch, who is going to have a big target on his back. Give me ASU.
Wow. Arizona State gets the upset. Obviously, I had Oklahoma State higher in my rankings. Part of that's on Oklahoma State being Oklahoma State. I think that this is why I did this. Oklahoma State vulnerable right now. I think if we did this exercise a year ago, we still would say Jon Rahm is the best player in the group. But I mean, that it was a different, when you think about what Fowler and Gooch were doing last year. I know you guys talked about Eckroat now, but I mean, those are 2 big names that are not getting it done so far this year. Grayson Murray, for those yelling into their headphones right now that he went to Wake Forest, that he went to East Carolina, I was going on where guys graduated from in terms of what their school would be. So Grayson Murray, it took him a long time to get to Arizona State, but he gets to be on this Arizona State team. Harold Varner, another guy who's saying he would love to be in this, but there's not enough East Carolina players. So Arizona State is our first 2 seed to the Final Four. Roberto, you look like you want to say something.
If we consider Wyndham Clark, who went to Oklahoma State longer than, for example, Matt Fitzpatrick went to Northwestern, they have a very compelling argument.
No,
but
doesn't count.
We're not doing that.
Doesn't count. Graduated from Oregon, which, by the way, we talked about Aaron Wise earlier. Aaron Wise leaving Oregon early opened up the roster spot for Wyndham Clark. So if you want to know a fun college golf story there, that opened it up, which I didn't mention. Casey Martin, who played at Stanford with Tiger Woods, is the head coach at Oregon. I forgot to mention that when we had Stanford's upset of Oregon, Tiger taking down his former collegiate teammate
There we go.
in the first round. Moving on to our last quarter to get to a Final Four team. Let's go Cal, Oklahoma. Big schools only. Homa, Morikawa, Ben On, red hot against that answer. Got her up. Anthony Kim, Motley Crue. I don't think this one's going to be close. Can we get some head nods here? Move along here. We're moving Cal on. We haven't talked much about Cal. We're going to have to talk about them in the Elite Eight. But this is a great Sweet 16 matchup. Wake Forest, Pepperdine. That's still Sweet 16, right? Yeah. Wake Forest, Pepperdine, Zalatoris, Young, Simpson against the Gala, Putnam, Highsmith. Myan, Andrew Putnam, I feel like he's a little bit of an X factor here. Does Wake Forest have enough firepower to move on?
Ooh, I don't know. I mean, this is one of those games you're watching that probably comes down to the final possession or the last couple holes in the anchor match, because it is pretty tight. I think Theegala and Zalatoris would be a lot of fun to watch and see how they go at it. Two guys that can play really good golf, but can also just play really bad golf. But if it's a match play scenario, an 8's as bad as a 5, so you're only going to lose the hole by one. So I like Pepperdine because I think young Joe Highsmith has something there. He's on a good run. He played well in some match play events in college, and Webb Simpson being in the back nine closer to the end of his career. I don't know. I think the young Joe Highsmith can come pick up a point, because I'm giving a point to Putnam with his putter. I mean, he's just lights out with the flat stick at the moment.
This could come down to a Highsmith versus Simpson matchup. Roberto, this is tight.
I think this is really interesting because I like the short game for the Gala a lot more than Zalatoris overall. I like Andrew Putnam's putting more than I like Cameron Young's overall, but Young can get hot. But I like the ball striking for Zalatoris and Young better than Theegala and Putnam. For that reason, I'm going to give the edge to the Demon Deacons. This feels like if it was an NBA playoff series, it'd be 5, maybe 6 games for the Deacons. But in a 1-game tournament setting, the putting short game edge goes to the Waves. They can get hot. Who knows? But overall, I'd give the slight edge to the Demon Deacons.
So we've got a split decision here. I'm going to stick with my start of Wake Forest, who I took to have the better seed. I think that we've been talking a lot. When you have a guy like Zalatoris, I think, we've still, is it match play? Is it stroke play? How are we doing all this? I think when you have a top player who you can rely on, I think you go to him. That's not to say that Theegala isn't playing great golf right now. And I think he's going to walk away from this thinking he's building a program at Pepperdine. But at the end of the day, I think with Cameron Young, like you guys said, maybe rounding into better form this year, that's really, you could argue, the 2 top players right there at Wake Forest. And Webb still can show up. We talked about if we're making the Augusta National comparison, I'm giving the ball to Webb over Joe Highsmith at this point. Joe Highsmith proved me wrong. Go out, do something at the Texas Children's Houston Open coming up, or the Valero Texas Open. Get your spot in Augusta, see what happens. But we're going to a narrow win for Wake Forest here to move on to this matchup, Wake Forest and Cal. So we haven't talked a lot about Cal. Will Zalatoris, Cameron Young, Webb Simpson against Homa, Morikawa, Ben On. I mean, you could tell me Ben On's the hottest of these 3 guys right now. But, Roberto, I mean, those are 2 incredibly reliable, not just players, but guys I'd want in a match play situation in Max Homa and Collin Morikawa.
Absolutely. I think Collin Morikawa is one of the tougher guys to go up in a matchup against, because He's shorter than everybody else, mostly among the big dogs on the PGA Tour, but he's very accurate, perennially a top 5, 10 guy in driving accuracy, which means he's going to be hitting first from the fairway when you're 10, 15 yards ahead of him, and he's going to be putting it 10, 15 feet just about every hole. So you're going to be hitting every iron shot with pressure on you. That's going to get real annoying really fast. Ben On is probably, for my money, the best number 3 player on any of these teams. So I really like the high floor that each of these 3 players has for the Golden Bears. I think Zalatoris has had the most success so far at Augusta National, but I think overall the Golden Bears have 3 of the 5 best players indisputably in this matchup, and maybe even 3 of the best 4. So give me Cal. Unfortunately, as much as I hate to say it, I got the Golden Bears going to the Final Four here.
Myan?
Yeah, no, I'm not arguing with that. I think this is a Cal team that is just really, really good. No other way to slice it. Collin Morikawa's had, a pretty bad stretch given the standards he put out there with his, incredible start, 2 quick majors early in his PGA Tour career. But he won last fall in Japan, finally got back into the winner's circle. 5 starts this season, 3 top 20 finishes, but it just feels like we're saying, Collin's not playing that great. And Roberto's mentioning the iron game is still there, one of the best ball strikers on the PGA Tour. I love Max Homa and his game, and he is a guy that can turn it on in the big moments. I know he's looking for some of that major success maybe this season and to be more consistent in those big events. But Max Homa is a great player. And I got to give a shout out to him clowning the TikTok troll or whoever it was the other day, saying that his wife Lacey is the reason he's been playing bad in this big events because she's been there for all of them. When the troll said, maybe it's the kid that just showed up. The Max always keeps it light, has that great sense of humor. And Ben On is, he's balling this year. He has it rolling. He's had a chance to win a couple events early in the season, and in his return to the PGA Tour these last few years has been in really good form. So I'm with Roberto. I think he's the best number 3 player maybe in this field, and Cal is a really, really good team. It's going to be a tough out.
I think it would be really interesting to see Will Zalatoris versus Ben On, 2 guys who have fought a bunch of putting woes. Will Zalatoris, not a terrible putter overall previously, but poor from inside 8-10 feet. Ben On, one of the worst putters on the PGA Tour, managed to keep his card for quite a while. They both moved to the lab broomstick. It'd be fun to see 2 broomstick guys going at it who can absolutely strike the ball.
I think the problem is that, in this hypothetical, Will Zalatoris has to play the one matchup, has to play against either Morikawa or Homa. The other is playing against Cameron Young. Those are 2 good matchups. If you take a split, I think then you're going to Ben On versus Webb Simpson. And at this point, you guys just talked about Ben On. Ben On so far this year, 7 events played, hasn't missed a cut, has 3 top 10s, has 5 top 25s in that stretch. He's been outstanding. So we're putting Cal into the Final Four. Texas, Georgia, Arizona State, and Cal are in the Final Four. Let's start with Texas against Georgia. All right. We already had, Roberto, we just had Stanford against Georgia. I didn't try to manipulate this. We've now got Texas against Georgia, 2 number 1 seeds. We're going to go back to Myan to start here. Texas is the number 1 overall seed on my list. Can the Texas Longhorns of Scottie Scheffler, Jordan Spieth, and Bo Hassler hold off the Dogs, Brian Harman, Chris Kirk, and Russell Henley? And remember, we're just going with these 3-guy lineups, not the depth.
Yeah, when you look at it, if they need to win, the winning side has to pick up 2 of those 3 points. I think you're immediately thinking Scheffler and Spieth probably take care of business. But I would say, I'd go Lee Corso on you. Not so fast, my friend. I think Brian Harman, no matter where you put him, is just going to grind you down. He's going to be tough. He's a guy that has that, kind of like we were talking about Grayson Murray earlier, that me against the world mentality a little bit. And he's been working really hard on his ball striking, 6 through 9 irons and scoring clubs to give himself better chances. He's got a putter that's like half the size of his shoe. His putter is gigantic when you look at it behind the golf ball. And it's worked all right for him. He had a tough weekend, tough final round at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Just kind of got his teeth kicked in by Bay Hill a little bit. I like Chris Kirk a lot. I think his game is really good and translates to a lot of places. And if we're thinking of Augusta, that draw, that right to left shape certainly works there. I think Russell Henley, if you're looking at the matchup of the threes, probably would take down Bo Hossler right now in current form, because Russell Henley is a guy that had a chance to win late last year at the Wyndham Championship, worked his way all the way to the Tour Championship, one of the 30 best players on the PGA Tour last season, and he was in the fight over the weekend at one of the toughest tests at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. We'll see what he does coming up at the Players and beyond this season, but gosh, I know it pains me to say it, but I just don't know that that Scheffler and Spieth are going to be extinguished by anyone, because they have that contagious momentum, it feels like, and I think they'll ride it to the title match.
Okay, so you're taking Texas.
Yeah.
There was a lot of political, let's support Georgia here and Russell Henley, but at the end of the day, it sounded like Texas. So now we got to see if Roberto will flip and go the other way while he's wearing his Longhorns hat and cream Texas Longhorns jersey. Can Texas hold on?
So you got to give Scottie Scheffler the edge over whoever he faces. I'd give the Dogs a victory over Bo Hossler with whomever you choose there. But the thing is, you got to take down Jordan Spieth in order to beat these Texas Longhorns. I saw Kyle Porter put out this tweet where he showed that Spieth's strokes gained in the 3 months leading up to Augusta has directly correlated with his Masters finish, and those have normally been top 4 finishes for him. He's got 6 top 4 finishes in the last decade. So Spieth this year on the PGA Tour, a couple events in, or three months in basically, he is 4th on the PGA Tour in strokes gained total at 1.5 per round. Scottie Scheffler is 1st. So you had to take down 2 of the top 4 players so far on the PGA Tour. It's a bit skewed because of a small sample size and course selection, and not every round has all the data. But the Longhorns have to have the edge here, and I think they take care of the Dogs, who go down barking, but in the end, it's the wrong course for them to run into this buzzsaw.
So it sounds like it's going to be Texas. I think that if you're doing this and it's Scheffler versus Harmon, amazing matchup. Like you guys said, you can give Henley the edge over Hossler. There's a Spieth Chris Kirk world where I want to see that match play, where Chris Kirk is just level-headed the entire time. You don't get anything out of him, and Spieth is just a maniac. And I think it would be fun. I don't have to say anything because you guys have taken Texas. You have hooked him to the final. But who will they be playing? Will it be Arizona State or Cal? We just gassed up this Cal team of Homa, Morikawa, and Ben On. Can the upstart Sun Devils, the only 2 seed in the Final Four, continue on? Rahm, Mickelson, Murray, Roberto, forget Kevin Yu for a second. Does Arizona State have an underdog gene here?
I think this is a really interesting matchup because you got the 2 top finishers from the Masters last year in Rahm and Mickelson. You got Murray, who is this resurgent golf story on the PGA Tour. Rory McIlroy's chirping at him to play better, Grayson, and he does now, coming off the Korn Ferry Tour last year. But you got Ben On, who also was on the Korn Ferry Tour 2 years ago, playing some resurgent golf. Max Homa hasn't had a ton of success at Augusta National, but overall, I think the Golden Bears have the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th best players in this matchup. So I got to give them the significant edge. I think that number 3 spot with Ben On over Grayson Murray is significant, even if Grayson Murray did take down Ben On in that playoff at the Sony Open.
Myan?
Yeah, I think it's the Ben On effect. I think he's the X factor here when you look at those 3 seeds. Max Homa, John Rahm, if that's who you're pairing up against each other, would be a lot of fun to watch. It's the battle of the Scottsdale clubs. You've got Silverleaf against Whisper Rock going out there, so I'm sure there would be a lot of fans in their own logos trying to see how that one ends up. With Morikawa and Mickelson, again, I could see, if those get split, the first 2 matches, Ben On has just been so good this season. And Roberto mentioned it. Got clipped by Murray there at the very end, but Ben On in regulation, had a chance to go out and win there. And he had a chance, a 4-foot putt to extend the playoff and to keep things going, just did not knock it in. But in terms of a full body of work, has been a little bit more consistent. And he's a really great ball striker. He's going to keep it in front of him and keep giving himself chances. So I think for that reason, I'm putting chalk up on the board and sending the Cal Bears to the title.
We should mention here, like let's give Jon Rahm the win over whoever he plays. Let's say it's Max Homa. Then let's say Collin Morikawa takes down Phil Mickelson. Then you have this third matchup with Grayson Murray and Ben On, which again, this is all fate. Have had Twitter beef in the past, have had their own arguments, which has a whole sort of loaded background story. Grayson Murray did hold off Ben On in the playoff at the Sony Open in Hawaii earlier this year, but I think that Ben On has been the more consistent player throughout the year. So I think in a 18-hole match play format, we're going to give Cal the advantage here. We're going to give Ben On the advantage, and we have our 1 versus 2 matchup in terms of overall seedings between Texas and Cal. Because Roberto's going to be perhaps biased because this is where he lives versus the team he despises. I'll start with you, Myan. You just talked up both teams. This is an absolute heavyweight, incredible battle of Scottie Scheffler, perhaps against Max Homa, Jordan Spieth against Collin Morikawa, and our final matchup of Ben On taking on Beau Hossler. So much to digest here in our championship match. Who is the winner?
Yeah, well, so they were the top 2 overall seeds coming into the bracket for a good reason. And you look at Texas and their 1-2 punch in Scheffler and Spieth, that is pretty darn formidable. And if Scottie Scheffler, if the putter is cooperating this day, there's not a person on the planet that's going to beat him. And even if the putter isn't cooperating, it's a short list of people on the planet that would probably take him down. But I would put Max Homa up there. I think Max Homa could take care of business if he goes up against Scottie Scheffler and aim point his way to a victory. Spieth and Morikawa would be a lot of fun. Those are 2 guys that can be very creative and obviously both multiple major winners. And so you've got that pedigree there. It's another one where I think it comes down to that third matchup. And in this case, maybe Ben On against Beau Hossler. I like Ben On. I mean, I think he is that kind of the glue factor when you looked at the depth of these teams. And I think it's going to be the Cal Golden Bears cutting down the nets in Jeff Eisenband's Golf March Madness. So the inaugural edition, for me, ends up with the Golden Bears claiming victory.
Roberto, I mean, I'm thinking about all the players before them, the Jason Kidds of the world, going through the Quanzo Martin era that Cal has gone through, everything. We're talking about cutting down the nets. Is this the team that gets Cal over the edge in March Madness?
I like Ben On in that matchup against Beau Hossler. There's nobody who'd I give an edge over Scottie Scheffler. I think you'd have some compelling arguments for a Brooks Koepka or a Jon Rahm, but Max Homa, if we're doing this at Augusta National in theory, hasn't had the success there that I can justify picking him, even though I do really like Max's form right now. Had him in my 1 and done last week, so that was a nice little gain, although it wasn't as good as Scottie Scheffler winning by 5 at the API. You got to give Scottie Scheffler the win. That means you got Jordan Spieth 1-on-1 against Collin Morikawa for the Jeff Eisenband Championship.
The Eyes on Golf.
The Eyes on Golf Championship.
March Madness Championship.
Let me put some respect on that name. Jeff Eisenband Eyes on Golf March Madness Championship. Jordan Spieth, Collin Morikawa. Collin is going to be really annoying to play against, but so is Jordan Spieth. He could chip in from anywhere. At the end of the day, I trust Jordan Spieth to get the ball in the cup more than I trust Collin Morikawa. Give me Jordan Spieth and the Longhorns. So which means we got 1-1. Myan's on Cal. I'm on the Longhorns. Jeff, who's the Eyes on Golf champion?
I'm going back and forth on this. I guess a couple notes. First of all, that sounded like the Michael Scott fun run for Meredith. If you guys know the whole long name in that episode of The Office. As Myan was talking, like I said, this is something that I've gone back and forth on. When I sent you guys the original list, I had Cal as my overall number 1 seed. I changed it to Texas after Scottie Scheffler's dominance at Bay Hill this past week. And now I heard Myan's argument and I started to think, am I going back to Cal right now? I heard the argument of you're given, you're probably giving Ben On is probably over, over Bo Hosser is probably the most given right now. So then you're asking Texas to win both of those two other matchups. We're talking about, a 4-pod player group there of guys who have played in Ryder Cups. Max Homa is the only non-major champion there, which maybe needs to be factored in. And then Roberto makes the argument that, you're probably giving Scheffler everything over everyone right now. If we're saying Homa's the top player, then you're going Spieth against Morikawa, which is an unbelievable matchup. I go back and forth on Spieth and match play because I believe he has never won a Ryder Cup match play singles. He has had obviously immense success in college, has had success in the WGC match play before, has had success at Augusta National, like you guys are talking about. So then I hear Roberto's argument, and then I'm kind of going back to Texas. So I'm back and forth. I'm going to go with Texas here. I'm going to hook him. It's a lot to think about, but because Scheffler, you're giving him one. And I think that right now, if Morikawa or Homa was playing better, I think that you could make that Cal argument more, but I'm going to stick with my gut of the reason that I dropped them back. They need to show us something. They need to show us something at Augusta. They need to show us something at these big venues because Max Homa hasn't done it at major championships. Collin Morikawa, since he won those two, hasn't really showed up at major championships. So this is going to be close, but we're giving Texas the national championship. Congrats to the Longhorns, Roberto, and all the fine people in Austin. They get it done. Kevin Durant couldn't do it. TJ Ford couldn't do it. Who am I missing? DJ Augustine couldn't do it. But Scottie Scheffler, Jordan Spieth, and Bo Hosser get it done. Of course, Jordan Spieth really did get it done in real life when he was at Texas. So congrats to them. I hope you guys enjoyed this. We probably went way too long, and I'm sure you have way bigger, more important things that you can do. But I appreciate the time. Any parting, kind of a parting shots, parting thoughts? We'll start with the champion, Roberto, celebrating his squad right now. Any parting thoughts on this, on my experiment here?
Couple of parting thoughts. You mentioned the Ryder Cup singles records. The President's Cup last time was played in 2022 at Quail Hollow. Max Homa was 4-0, but there was one golfer who had a better record than him. That was Jordan Spieth, who was 5-0. So yes. Those two guys would be very interesting. We saw the most recent match had the lowest ratings that it's ever had. I feel like this kind of format where if we pitted the two Final Four teams or the four Final Four teams against each other in some kind of a mini bracket for the next couple of matches for the match championship or something like that, I think that would be really compelling TV. Get the guys' competitive juices flowing, get big-time golfers out there, and it's easy to resonate with fans because everybody has an opinion on a Texas or an Oklahoma State, or at least one of the golfers in those pods. So it would be a lot of fun to see this happen in real life. This is all conjecture. There will be a lot more upsets in real life, so I feel like that would be a lot of fun to watch. But thanks for having me, Jeff. Really fun talking with you guys as always. Look forward to seeing you guys at PGA Tour Live.
No, I think that's a good point because fans have been clamoring for if there is going to be a team golf format, why not make it guys who played college together or something like that? So maybe I'm not a total psycho and maybe this is a preview of what we might see to come. Myan, sorry about Georgia, but what else can you say about this?
Oh, man. Well, that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed chatting with you guys. And I think Roberto made a good point there at the end. I mean, every player on this list is so good. So, it wouldn't surprise me to see Augusta and the Jaguars claiming a title if this was played out in real life, because that's the level of golf that these guys play. But, in our hypothetical world, I think it's hard to argue with Texas being the best right now. I know I put up a fight there for the Bears and could see it happening, but no, that was a lot of fun. It's cool. There's a number of great programs that could field 2-3 teams in this field. Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma State. You look at that, but it's fun to see and give love to some of those other programs that have built themselves up really nicely with professional success, like Illinois, like Kent State, like North Texas. And
you guys took Illinois out in the first round.
Well, I mean, let's see what Adrian Dumont Deschassard does. He's, I think he's going to round out that Belgian trio, and maybe next year they'll make a deep run. My only parting shot for you, Jeff, is I'm going to do my inner Denny McCarthy here. I've got a hoop there. I've got a ball here. Ball's going to go in the hoop. Let's see it. Oh, short! Can't leave it short. Maybe next time.
That was another Michael Scott reference. You should have said, catch me on the flippity flip.
Yeah.
As for people on video, mine tossed a ball behind him to a hoop in his house in Knoxville. I think that's a great point about, shout out to schools like Pepperdine, Kent State, North Texas, Vanderbilt, who have been able to build stellar programs. And when I was doing this, I wanted to do something fun with golf and March Madness, and seeing some of the depth. And, I think unlike other sports, right, you can go into a bar and talk to basketball fans and football fans, and they can start reeling off where guys went to college. Sometimes golf fans don't know that. But while we're here, I do encourage everyone to watch college golf, to go to college golf events when there might be something present, because you might see, Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas playing against each other in a singles match at the national championships. I think back to last year, we talked about guys like Christo Lamprecht, Gordon Sargent. I mentioned Fred Biondi, who's not on the Florida team, but will probably be on this team if we do this in years to come. There's some immense talent out there, and this was really fun to do. You can catch all three of us and both these guys on PGA Tour Live. I might actually release this before Players tomorrow, now that I think about it, after what we put together. I don't know. I don't want to get caught in the Players traffic on the internet, but we'll see when I put this up. Mine's going to be on the Players Championship this week on featured holes. I'll be doing Valspar Championship next week. Roberto and mine, I think you guys both said you're on the Texas Children's Houston Open coming up. So we got a lot coming up on the airwaves. And I think you can catch mine, Collin. Tennessee, was it baseball or softball today?
Yeah, baseball. God.
By the time people will listen to it, unfortunately, they won't be able to watch that. But thank you guys. Thanks for being on Eyes on Golf. This was fun. And I guess all we can say is hook 'em. Thank you to Roberto. Thank you to Myan. They gave me way more time than I could have expected them to give me for a totally hypothetical, fake bracket that we decided to discuss. But I think that was awesome. I think that was fun. And kind of as we got into it, I really love that point that if there is a team golf, that a united golf world that has team golf, it might look something like this. I know there's a lot of, talk about players who would maybe join with their college buddies, players who would join with their friends, people from their home countries. So who knows if we might be onto something down the road. Maybe like Roberto said, maybe it's an exhibition event that we focus on college alumni playing together. So I'm ending this by saying I'm not crazy. There's something here. Thanks for listening to Eyes on Golf. If you have thoughts on the bracket, what you would do, please Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, wherever you're at, Eyes on Golf, send us a message, reply, comment, give us what you think should be the case here. So thank you again for listening to Eyes on Golf, and I will see you next time.